Shabbat Shalom. We haven't seen you in a couple weeks because my niece, grandniece, anyway, my niece Rachel was here. She's 10, 11 years old. She took a lot of our time. Something happened to my tripod, selfie stick thing. It's gone. Don't know what happened to it, really. We found my backup, which was good, but last week we couldn't even do a live video because we couldn't find the equipment to even set my phone up. And it wasn't until much later in the day that I thought I should have used my computer, but I didn't think of it. So anyway, we're here, we're back. It's been a couple weeks. I apologize for that. We are in 2 Corinthians chapter 9. We're going to start reading in verse 6 all the way to the end of the chapter. And we'll discuss this. We're going to discuss what we read today on Shabbat at 11 a.m. So I hope that you'll join us there. But with no further ado, let's open up in a word of prayer, and then I'll start reading. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for allowing us to meet here on the Sabbath. We thank you for the opportunities you give us to walk in obedience, but also to spend time with our family. I pray that we have a good Shabbat, and I pray that we have a good Bible study. All this I ask in the name of Yahushua Messiah. Amen. All right, so we're in 2 Corinthians chapter 9. We're going to start reading in verse 6. We're going to read to the end of the chapter. I know some of you are thinking, but didn't we read verse 6 already? And you're thinking correctly. But I like to back up and, give a little context to the passage that I'm going to be teaching out of. I have to warn you that some of what I have to say may seem somewhat controversial, and we'll talk about that a little bit today, but mostly tomorrow during Shabbat. So, 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 6, "But this I say, he which soweth sparingly shall reap also sparingly, and he which soweth bountifully shall reap also bountifully. Every man according to his purpose, according to as he purposed in his heart, so let him give, not grudgingly or of necessity, for Elohim loveth a cheerful giver. And Elohim is able to make all grace abound toward you, that ye always, having all sufficiency in all things, may abound in every good work. As it is written, he hath dispersed abroad, he hath given to the poor, his righteousness remaineth forever. Now he that ministereth seed to the sower, both minister bread for your food, and multiply your seed sown, and increase the fruits of your righteousness, being enriched in everything to all bountifulness, which causeth through us thanksgiving to Elohim. For the administration of this service not only supplieth the want of the saints, but is abundant also by many thanksgivings unto Elohim, whiles by the experiment of this ministration they glorify Elohim for your professed subjection unto the good news of Messiah, and for your liberal distribution unto them and unto all men, and by their prayer for you, which long after you, for the exceeding grace of Elohim in you. Thanks be unto Elohim for his unspeakable gift." Now, there's a lot this chapter says about being a cheerful giver, and really about commending the people in Corinth for being generous in their giving. But there's an undercurrent in the last half of chapter 9 that I think goes missed because we don't understand the nature of our Creator. And I say that not excluding myself. If you don't know what I'm talking about theology. Theology is the study of Yahweh. Okay, so we're going to talk about who Yahweh is and how he's depicted. And the best way to do that is to look at the things that are not said directly about him, but are said like what Paul says it here. He says it kind of indirectly. So first off, giving's good. He makes that very clear. Yahweh loves a cheerful giver. And he says that, every man should give according as he purposed in his heart. So let him give, not grudgingly or of necessity. For Elohim loves a cheerful giver. So what he's saying here is that, he's finishing up this idea of how people ought to give. And we ought to give as we've purposed in our heart. In other words, we should give what we've decided to give. And that seems like that should go without saying. If you decide to give something, then you're giving it, right? Well, not always. No, people sometimes will say, hey, I'm going to do this nice thing, I'm going to give you this thing, and then after a little bit of a little bit of contemplation and stuff, people will back out of their promises to gift somebody. One time we had somebody drive down from a church up in Hammond, Indiana, and they saw where we were living and how many kids we were. Tina and I were very, 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 very impoverished at that time. Had 6 kids living in a 650 square foot house, and it was crowded. And these people were like, there's this other house in town, it's for sale. If they'll take less money than what they're asking, they were asking, I don't remember how much, but it was like, let's say $30,000. And they were like, you should ask them if they'll take $11,000 for it. And we were like, well, no, at first she was like, you ought to ask them if they'll give it to you. And I said, well, I'll ask them, but I don't think they will. I know the people. I don't think they're going to give it to me. She was like, well, you should ask them. And I said, well, if they don't give it to me, what if but they'll take less money? She goes, if they won't give it to you and they'll take less money, then I will pay for the house and give it to you. I was like, wow, I don't know this lady. She was somebody that was coming down to talk to the people at a church I was going to at the time. But she promised to buy me a house. And I thought, well, that's just too good to be true. Well, it was. She got back to Hammond, Indiana, wherever she was going. And when we came back to her, it was like they said they would take a tremendously low amount of money. It was like $5,000 or $8,000 for the house. It was very, very low. She stopped taking my calls. She was really hoping that I would go ask for the house for free and they would give it to me for free. And then that would end her obligation. And so when that didn't end her obligation, apparently she ended it herself, because what she purposed in her heart to do, she didn't actually do. So I guess the first step to giving is to purpose something in your heart and then do that. And then it says, and not to give it grudgingly or out of necessity. And what this means is that you shouldn't give it regretting that you're giving it. If you're gonna purpose something in your heart, you should do it, but you shouldn't do it grudgingly. You should do it willingly, happily. And then it says that you shouldn't do it out of necessity. In other words, if you promise to give something, you shouldn't wait until somebody forces you to do the thing you promised to do. It shouldn't be an issue of necessity, because Yahweh loves a cheerful giver. He loves it when we give cheerfully, willingly, happily. So that's the little bit of this Bible study that covers the whole giving thing. Oh, I guess there's a little bit more. It says, and Elohim is able to make all grace abound toward you, that you always having all sufficiency in all things may abound to every good work. So he says, so Paul is saying, Yahweh's able to meet all your needs and to make sure you have everything that you need, including those things that you might give away. And he's going to do that because he wants you to do more good things. So he's going to give you more stuff. If you step out in faith and give a little, Yahweh will give you more and more and more to meet your needs, to cover your loss, but also to enrich your life. And in verse 9, he says, as it is written, he hath dispersed abroad. And this is where we get into the theology side of this. In verse 9, this is a quote from Psalm 112, verse 9. He says, as it is written, he hath dispersed abroad, he hath given to the poor, his righteousness remaineth forever. And this is talking about Yahweh, of course, that he has dispersed abroad, he had given to the poor, his righteousness remains forever. So all of a sudden, we shift away from the people in Corinth need to be generous in their giving to some sort of acknowledgement that they need to be generous in their giving because Yahweh is the one who's caring for everybody. Which is this is where the transition of the focus goes from what is expected of us to Yahweh getting the credit for it. So you're gonna see this transition to where it goes from you're supposed to do this thing. It's going to transition from you're supposed to do this thing to bam, Yahweh is doing this thing. So this is where that transition happens. Verse 10 says, now he that ministers seed unto the sower, both minister bread for your body, and multiply your seed sown, and increase the fruits of righteousness. What is being said here? Well, if we keep reading all the very last verse in the chapter, it says, "Thanks be unto Elohim for his unspeakable gift." And so what we see here at the end of the chapter, we're thanking Yahweh for the gifts that he gives us. Verse 10 says that he ministers seed to us, and from that seed we're able to make bread, and we're able to have more seed to sow, and which will increase the fruit. So if you plant one seed, let's say of wheat, you'll get exponentially more, like let's say 50 seeds of wheat, which is probably more than what you'll get. Let's say 25. One seed yields 25 seeds. If that wheat matures and grows and is harvested properly, you can take and multiply that seed by 25. And then if you take into consideration that one of those seeds has to replace the one you planted, then you're multiplied by 24. Well, 24 is enough to make bread and still have seed left over to give to somebody else. What this verse is teaching us is that you may make the bread, you may plant the seed, you may harvest the seed, but it's Yahweh that gave you the seed. Yahweh's the one who is the minister of the seed. Everything that happens after he gives you the seed is directly related to his initial gift of the seed. And this is how all of our giving and all of our life should be focused and looked through under this lens. We should understand that when people do good for us, it's because Yahweh way back is the minister of the seed of that good. When we're able to give anything to anybody else, Yahweh is the minister of the seed that led to that generosity. And so what we're finding out here in verse 10 is that Yahweh is the one that should be thanked for his unspeakable gift of the seed. And you may think, well, he skipped a lot of verses. He went from verse 10 to verse 15, and there's a lot of stuff in between. Well, let's look at that stuff. So let's look at verse 11. Being enriched in everything to all bountifulness, which causes through us thanksgiving to Elohim. So if we go back to verse 8, he says, and Elohim is able to make all grace abound toward you, that ye always having all sufficiency in all things may abound to every good work. And then verse 9 and 10 is kind of in parentheses, so verse 11 picks up that thought. So he's able to, having all sufficiency in all things may abound to every good work, being enriched in everything all bountifulness, which causes through us thanksgiving to Elohim. So we're talking about the generosity of the people of Corinth and how Yahweh has provided them with the grace and the abundance that they have to be generous to other people. And he says that because they were so enriched in verse 11, being enriched, because they were so enriched by Elohim in everything to all bountifulness, which causes through us thanksgiving to Elohim. In other words, we're causing people by being generous not to thank us. If we give somebody something and they turn to us, they say thank you, and we don't direct that thankfulness back to Elohim, back to Yahweh, then we are robbing him of his blessing. We are robbing him. We're saying we're taking credit for the thing that he did. He is the minister of the seed. He's the beginning of every gift that we give, every generous act that we perform, every offering that we partake of. He is the originator of that. And so Paul is acknowledging that all of the generosity of the people in Corinth is going to generate, what did he say? Which causes through us thanksgiving. It's going to generate thanksgiving to Elohim. Well, are people thanking the wrong people? I mean, think about it. I mean, we teach our kids when we give them a drink of water or, a ice cream cone that they need to tell us thank you, right? As we tell them, say thank you. Here you go, say thank you. But the truth is that I couldn't have bought say that ice cream cone. I couldn't have bought that if I didn't go to work. So should they really be thanking me? Maybe they should be thanking my boss. I mean, who should we thank? And that's the question that pops up here, and Paul answers it. He says the thanksgiving to Elohim. That when we receive good things, it's okay to thank the person that gave it to you, but it's more accurate to thank the Creator, the minister of the seed that grew into that thing that was given to you. Verse 12 says, the administration of this service, for the administration of this service not only supplieth the want of the saints, but is abundant also by many thanksgivings to Elohim. The administration of this service. The administration is our part. We administer the service. The service isn't ours, though. Administrators of something are just the overseers. They're the distributors of this thing. So in a sense, what Paul is saying is that we don't just supply the wants of the saints by doing the service that Yahweh started as the minister of the seed. That word service is the same as the word minister. It means to give, to serve. It doesn't come from the same Greek word, mind you, but I just want you to know that the idea of service and ministry are very similar. They're the same idea. And he's saying that we are administration for the service. It's not our service, it's our administration. We're commanded to do that thing. And if you think of it like the servants, the faithful servants that Yahweh, the Messiah told about in his parable, that some of them were given certain talents and they were given authority and stewardship over those things. It wasn't their talents, it wasn't their money, but they were required to administer that money and multiply that money. It was not their money, but it was their job to take care of it. And this is not our generosity. It's our job to take care of it. Yahweh is calling us to be generous to each other and to love one another enough to be giving to one another, but it's not our gift, because all good and perfect gifts come from the Father of lights. So, in verse 13, he says, whiles by the experiment of this ministration they glorify Elohim for your professed subjection unto the good news of Messiah, and for your liberal distributions unto them and unto all men. Who do they glorify? They glorify Elohim. Who alone deserves glory? It's Yahweh. And so when we give things and we do things, it's Yahweh that should get the praise. Why should Yahweh get the praise for the thing that I do or the thing that you do? Well, it's because it's Yahweh's service. It's Yahweh's ministry. It's Yahweh's good deed. He's calling on us to participate in that good deed. Sorry, my eyes are a little messed up and I keep having to take my glasses off, because with my glasses on, I can't focus on anything. With my glasses off, I can at least see the screen. Anyway, the idea is that when we do the righteous thing, when we do the good thing, when we give money to somebody, when we keep the Sabbath, when we keep the feast days, when we tell somebody about the truth, about Torah, about the Messiah, about Yahweh, when we do the righteous things, it's the righteous things that are Yahweh's righteous things. And we become administrators of those righteous things. If I tell you the truth, it's not because I am truth. It's because I am an administrator of truth. Yahweh is truth. The Messiah is truth. I'm not truth. It's not my truth. It's not your truth. I don't care what the politicians say or the culture says. There's one truth. It's Yahweh. Yahweh is truth. The Messiah is truth. When we talk about Torah, it's not my Torah. It's not Moses' Torah. It's Yahweh's Torah. It's his instructions. And so as we read through this, and we see that the generosity of Corinth is, at first, he's like, I boasted on you. You guys are so generous. You guys are so giving. You're so loving. I told everybody that this is who you were. I think that Paul realized that that would be an incomplete praise. It would be an incomplete thing. It would not be good or just. What's just is saying you guys are doing a good job but understand that all of this is because of Yahweh. What does Hebrews chapter 12 verse 2 says? It says, look to the Messiah, for he is the author and the finisher of our faith. Our faith doesn't come from us. Somebody told you the truth about the Messiah, you believed it. It wasn't because all of a sudden you were able to generate enough belief within that broken, tiny little sinful heart of yours that all of a sudden salvation sprung from that little bit of truth and faith and all that. No, the faith comes from the Messiah. He puts it in you. Somebody tells you the gospel, the good news, salvation, righteousness. They preach to you these things, and you hear them. That makes you the exception because nobody else hears it. A lot of people don't hear this truth. Is it because they just can't make themselves believe, or is it because that the minister of seed never planted it in them? I would argue that it's Yahweh. That if Yahweh wants glory for all of the good things that we do, then he has to deserve that glory. And he does. And he deserves it by doing those things through us. Free will is in Scripture. It says that we can give a free will offering. And when we look up the word free will in the English Bible, or the words, I should say, free will in the English Bible, you will come up with places where you can find it. And it always just means that you're doing the right thing on purpose. It just means that you chose to do righteous things instead of unrighteous things. That's all that free will, that's how it's depicted in Scripture. It's just an act of choosing to do what's good. There's no free will associated with doing what's wrong. If you look, you'll never find it. Somebody doesn't sin in free will. Why is that? Well, it's because it's our nature to sin. It's not our free will. It's not something that we choose to do. It's something that we're born with. We were conceived in iniquity. That man has fallen and we have a sinful nature. We are born as depraved as rats. And it's only through the intervention of a divine and holy creator that we can see any righteous act and say, I think I'm going to do that. Because he is the minister of the seed. You see, if we created our own free will, if we created our own righteousness by our own choices and our own actions, then why do we need a sacrifice? Why do we need forgiveness? We can't generate those things. They are outside of our ability. Our abilities are to do sinful things. We were born in sin. We were conceived in sin. Everything about us is sinful. But if you read what Paul wrote there to Corinth, we find out that all the giving that Corinth has done, Yahweh's getting credit for it. He's being glorified. We give thanks to Yahweh for what he's done. We glorify Yahweh for what he's done through Corinth. Well, what has been done for you? What have you done for others? Are you trying to rob Yahweh of his glory? Are you trying to say, well, I chose righteousness because I am righteous? Because if you are not righteous, you cannot choose righteousness. It's not an option. If you're an unrighteous person, you can choose unrighteousness. Only the righteous can choose to be righteous, can choose to do righteous. And I'm not righteous, but I do righteous things because I have a creator who is righteous. And he has instilled within me some of his righteousness. I am an administrator of his righteousness. And when I do things, it's because he did them. When I do good things, it's because he did them. When I do wicked things, it's because he allowed me to. Because he allowed me to just do what was natural for me. And I understand that this could be kind of controversial. People are going to say, but what about this? What about that? I'm going to tell you it's not as complicated as all of that. It's actually pretty simple. If you do righteous things, then glorify Yahweh for allowing you to do them. Because this world is full of unrighteous people that do unrighteous things, and they don't even know that when they tell the truth, that they're actually keeping Torah. They don't know that when they are faithful to their spouse, they're keeping Torah. They don't know that when they don't steal something, that they're keeping Torah. They're just doing righteousness on accident. They're not administrators of that righteousness. Yahweh is doing righteousness through the unrighteous person. Fortunately, he has made me aware of righteousness. And fortunately, that means that I am his elect. And that means that when I choose righteousness, I'm choosing it because he allowed me to. And he wants me to. And he's driving me towards righteousness. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for it is Yahweh that works within you to will and to do his good pleasure. Yahweh is working within us. He is the minister of the seed that brings about our righteous behavior. He is the minister of the seed. And that's what Paul's pointing out here, that Yahweh is he's like, if you trace all good works back down to something, to its origin, the origin is always going to be Yahweh. That all of our good works, let's say that you honor your father and mother. Why do you honor your father and mother? If you're a believer and you're one of the elect, then you honor your father and mother because Yahweh told you to. It traces back to Yahweh's commandments. Maybe you honor your father and mother because some pastor behind a pulpit told you to. Well, if you look at where he got it, it's going to trace back to Yahweh's commandments. Are you a generous person? It traces back to Yahweh's commandments. Are you an honest person? It traces back to Yahweh's commandments. Yahweh is the minister of the seed. He has given us a directive to do righteous things. And he's given us the ability to do it. All of it is him. So when you do righteous, praise Yahweh. When you help somebody, encourage them to praise Yahweh. When somebody does something for you, glorify Yahweh's name. There's nothing that we don't have to be ungrateful to the person that Yahweh used to give us these things or to do these things for us. But we do need to remember that Yahweh alone deserves the glory. Do you want to say that your righteousness is built upon your choices? Think about that. If you are saying that you are righteous because you make good choices, then what part does Yahweh play in that? Does he get partial credit for showing you what righteousness was? I don't think Yahweh wants partial credit. I think he wants all of it. And that is the whole point to this. The gifts that Corinth are giving to the saints, Corinth might want some of that credit. But Yahweh deserves all of the credit because he is the minister of the seed. Without the seed, nothing else would exist. And so there's a lesson in theology here. Yahweh is even bigger than you can imagine. And he is the origin of every victory over sin you've ever had. He is the once upon a time, the first line in the story. And because he's the first line, all of the story depends upon him. Your life depends upon him. Your righteousness depends upon him. It doesn't depend on you, it depends on him. Did you tell a lie today? Well, repent. And then ask Yahweh to help you not do it anymore, because he alone is going to drive sin out of your life. You can't do it. All right, well, that's the Bible study. Hopefully we have a good discussion tomorrow when we do the live broadcast. Shabbat Shalom, and we'll see you at 11 o'clock a.m.